All right. Couple of programming note. At 1 p.m., the Secretary General will receive Michael R. Bloomberg in his conference room to announce a new assignment on climate change for the former mayor of New York City. There will be a photo op followed by a very brief Q&A in the SG's conference room, and we'll try to finish this up here in time for you to go up. Also at 3 p.m. today, the Secretary General and the President of the General Assembly will provide a joint briefing to member states at an informal meeting of the General Assembly on peace building and sustaining peace. The Secretary General will inform member states that we have made progress on enhancing coherence in the UN system around peace building and sustaining peace, but more remains to be done. He will discuss how inclusive and sustainable development makes a critical contribution to conflict prevention, how gender considerations must remain front and center in all our efforts to sustain peace, and how failure to make progress on financing peace building will undermine other efforts to save lives, stabilize countries in crisis, and alleviate suffering and protect the vulnerable. Earlier today, a UN Syrian Arab Red Crescent and International Committee of the Red Cross interagency convoy entered DOUMA in the besieged East Ghouta area for the first time since November 15, 2017. Teams are now delivering food for approximately 27,500 people in need, along with health and nutritional supplies. Many of the planned health supplies intended for DOUMA were not allowed to be loaded or to be replaced with other humanitarian items. The items include trauma kits and other life-saving supplies. Consequently, 3 of the 46 trucks sent to DOUMA today were close to empty. Fighting and airstrikes continue in East Ghouta today for the deployment of the convoy, including in DOUMA City, while the convoy is unloading. At the same time, shelling from eastern Ghouta also reportedly hit Damascus. The UN calls once again on all parties to facilitate unconditional, unimpeded, and sustained access to all people in need throughout the country, especially in eastern Ghouta and other besieged areas and hard-to-reach areas throughout Syria. Turning to Nigeria, an assessment to Ran town in Borno State in northeast Nigeria is scheduled by humanitarian partners for this week. This is in the wake of last Thursday's attack on the town where 3 aid workers were killed. At present, there is no aid worker presence in Ran, as the 52 aid workers who were recently evacuated on Friday. Across northeast Nigeria, there are approximately 3,000 aid workers operating in 26 locations compared to a few hundred in early 2016. The operational capacity of humanitarian partners in the 3 most affected states, Adamawa, Borno, and Yobe, continue to expand with 73 national and international partners, including 31 international NGOs, 33 national NGOs, and 9 UN agencies. Couple of trips to flag. The Secretary General Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict, Pramila Patten, just concluded an 8-day visit to Iraq, during which she heard firsthand the wrenching accounts of survivors from Daesh sexual violence. She stressed the need to ensure that survivors of conflict-related sexual violence are fully protected and that perpetrators of these horrendous crimes are brought to justice. And the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Yukiya Amano, spoke at the agency's Board of Governors meeting today and told them that the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action with Iran represents a significant gain for verification. As of today, he said Iran is implementing its nuclear-related commitments. It is essential that Iran continue to fully comply with those commitments. If the agreement were to fail, Mr. Amano said, it would be a great loss for nuclear verification and for multilateralism. And today we say thank you to our friends in Namibia and Windhoek who have paid the regular budget dues in full, bringing us up to 63. And one last programming note. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. there'll be a press conference here sponsored by the Mission of Canada entitled A Credible Watch List Recommendations for the Secretary General's 2018 report on children in armed conflict. Questions? Mr. Lee.
I wanted to ask you, there's a big conference in London today about abuse in the aid industry. And in connection with that, it's been disclosed that UNHCR, where Antonio Guterres was obviously the chief, had, definitely more than a dozen complaints.
Yeah, we disclosed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is part of the periodic reporting. So
right.
Yeah. Okay.
So I guess my question is, as I'm sure you've seen the article, the coverage over there, they're saying that Angelina Jolie, for example, is surprised by this and tends to raise it to the agency. But I wanted to know what the secretary. I mean, maybe he'll answer it upstairs within this Bloomberg thing. But what is his response? What did he do at the time, given the focus that it is now and it's being presented as one of his major issues?
At the time, this was an important issue already when he was High Commissioner. He left about 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. But I think the Secretary General himself said a few months ago he's fully aware that there are probably more cases involving civilians than uniformed uniformed personnel. This is an issue that all of us in the system have a responsibility to deal with, which I think the Secretary General is leading the charge on this. Every time anyone is placed in a situation of imbalance of power, in the vast majority, it's between men and women, they become high-risk environments. It's important that there is, on one hand, an education campaign, that people fully understand what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and that, on the other hand, people are kept accountable through the various legal processes. And also, the other issue which is important is the one of transparency, which the Secretary General is very much pushing the whole system on. That's why we're doing these periodic briefings on issues of sexual exploitation and abuse.
So just one quick follow-up on transparency. The ICSC, have they disclosed the number of harassment complaints, and does the Secretary General, would he encourage them to? Does he have jurisdiction? The International Civil Service Commission.
Jurisdiction over them, but he would encourage any entity within the UN system to be fully transparent. Shauna.
How does the SG weigh in on the high-level meeting that's taking place or due to take place between the South Korean envoys to the president and Kim Jong-un? And secondly, if you could elaborate, what does the SG believe should be the conditions for the start of any negotiations, given that the U.S. and Japan want to see kind of a credible promise and action towards denuclearization?
I think the Secretary General is not is first of all encouraged, I think, by the trip today to Pyongyang, the direct talks that are taking place. We have to see what the outcome is, obviously. The focus needs to remain on the denuclearization, the peaceful denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. It is not up to the Secretary General to put requirements on whatever talks there will be, but discussions need to be had, and that's been his consistent message over the last few weeks. Nizar.
Thank you, Stéphane. In Gunderis, a town in northern Syria, there was a major massacre today by an aerial airstrike. Do you have anything about it? Also, I asked in the past about that massacre which took place in Deir Zur area, where about 30 people were obliterated totally by an airstrike. I did not get an answer to that.
As soon as we have information on any incidents, we will try to share it with you.
What that has been more than a week now.
I can only go on the information that is given to me.
On the aid to DOUMA, how do you guarantee that this aid will not land in the hands of the armed groups?
Our humanitarian colleagues on the ground have well-oiled procedures. They work with local partners, with local Syrian partners. I have to say the vast majority of the risks taken by humanitarian workers are taken by national and by Syrian humanitarian workers, whether working for the UN or for the Red Crescent and other organizations. And I think we can never salute their bravery enough. As I said, we work with local partners to ensure that aid is delivered to those people in need.
In the case of eastern Aleppo, after the liberation of eastern Aleppo, they found huge quantities of aid which was hoarded by the armed
anyone who uses aid as a tool of war is violating international norms. Yes, sir.
Just as a follow-up to Shauna's question, are there any actions the Secretary General is willing and able to take with any of the parties involved?
The Secretary General, as he said, it remains at the disposal of the parties for his good offices, and so that's a standard position. I think the trip that he dispatched Mr. Feltman on to North Korea to the DPRK in December was a very useful trip. The Secretary General is willing to play whatever role is asked of him to get to the goal that we want to reach. Petul, you had a question which you're not asking, but which I will answer. This is how good we are here. We don't even need to ask. I know you'd asked on Afrin, and what I can tell you that there's now been just over 5,000 people who have exited Afrin, but we understand that local authorities are still blocking anyone from exiting the district. Mr. Lee, and then we'll go. So, yes, you may. You may actually ask a question.
That was the question indeed. Did the UN contact the local authorities to find out why they are being blocked, the civilians?
I don't believe we have any direct contact with the local authorities. It is critical that people be able to move freely and to leave any area they wish to. Mr. Lee.
Sure. I wanted to ask something about South Sudan. Over the weekend, there was reporting in the pro-government press there that a UN vehicle was found with weapons in it, and opposition Joseph Bagosora has said it's not true, has asked for an investigation, said it's part of a campaign by the government to vilify and delegitimize the opposition. I wanted to know, since it was a UN vehicle, are they investigating, and what can you say about it?
I'm not aware of the case.
There's a picture of the...
I'm not denying that there's a picture of anything. I'm just saying I personally am not aware of the case. You may want to reach out to the mission directly.
Would the Secretary General be concerned if a host government of a major peacekeeping mission is saying that UN vehicles are...
As I'm saying, I'm not aware of it. I don't want to speculate. I think if you can follow up that question directly with the mission.
And you'd said on Western Sahara that you were trying to get something from Mr. Kohler. There's reportedly a meeting between him and the Moroccan side in Lisbon. Is that the case?
That's my understanding. I'm trying to get some more details. Thank you.